Welcome to the special report with Areva Martin. Wow, today we are pausing to honor a man who helped shape our view of Black excellence on screen, none other than Malcolm-Jamal Warner. Look, losing anyone is hard. It's hard, but some losses hit deeper. They reach into our childhoods, our culture, our collective memory. The passing of Malcolm Jamal Warner is one of those moments, a dynamic force on and off the screen. His absence is being felt everywhere, as seen in the outpouring of love and grief flooding social media. This isn't just about a beloved actor, it's about what he represented to all of us. Wow. From his unforgettable role as Theo Huxtable on the hit iconic series The Cosby Show to his poetic presence in music and activism, Malcolm's legacy is etched into our cultural DNA. For millions, especially Black families, Theo wasn't just a character, he was a brother, a son, and a mirror. His humanity, his flaws, his growth, it gave us something rare, something so rare on primetime TV, the chance to see ourselves in full color. And Malcolm Jamal Warner was more than an actor. He was grace personified, an accomplished musician, spoken word artist, director, Emmy nominated actor, and Grammy Award winner. We are here today to pay tribute to our brother and to many, our friend. Joining me for this very special tribute conversation is Kimberly Latrice Jones. She is a New York Times bestselling author and filmmaker who interviewed Malcolm just a few years ago, and I'm learning now has become a friend to Malcolm. Also in this conversation today is Shyneika Taylor. She's an entertainment journalist and host for VH1 and TMZ. I am so grateful to both of you, dynamic, powerful women, to join me today as we pay tribute to Malcolm Jamal Warner. I want to start with you, Kimberly. You were personal friends with Malcolm and had the chance to sit down with him on numerous occasions. And I just learned you actually recently had a chance to go see him and his band perform. Just talk a little about him and his impact.
Yeah, I always say that, like, if it's one word that I would use to describe Malcolm is integrity. His integrity was always intact. It was always at the forefront of how he handled things, whether it was business, the art he created, but also his friendships and his relationships were very rooted in integrity. He didn't use the word friend lightly, because if he was going to be your friend, he was going to be a real friend. He checked in on my health, he checked in on my well being. If I posted something on social media saying I was having a bad day, I would immediately get a text from him like, "Are you okay? Do I need to come see you? Do you want, let's go to the juice bar." Um, you know, and so when you think about a show like The Cosby Show, that I describe as having like a Michael Jackson level impact. And what I mean by that is there was nothing like it beforehand, there was nothing like it after, and it stands the test of time. He is a clear marker in our cultural history. And so, even though he was my close personal friend, I felt for his fans and followers yesterday, because I'm like, he was your brother and your uncle and and he felt that way to people. So this feels like a familiar loss to people.
Yeah, you were part of his Not All Hood podcast. And I know you told me just before we started taping that you were due to be back on the podcast this week.
Yeah.
Talk about that, like knowing that you would have been sitting down with someone who is a good friend of yours, and then to get this news. I just, what were your first thoughts when you realized that that podcast interview would not be happening and you wouldn't have that time with him that obviously was so important to you?
I mean, it broke my heart in a million pieces. in a million pieces. And the thing that I loved about Malcolm more than anything is that when it came to celebrating Black liberation and being clear about Black liberation, he was not afraid. When you look at the guests that he's had on Not All Hood, a lot of us are the ones that mainstream media are afraid to sit down with, are afraid to communicate with, are afraid to talk to. And he welcomed us with open arms to have difficult conversations, to have truthful and honest conversations. And he didn't run. I was telling somebody a story the other day about, there was a clip of something that I said that Malcolm posted, and I saw a couple of other like A-list celebrities copy it from his page, and then an hour later they had all taken it off of their page, but it maintained on his page because he didn't shy away from conversations. He wasn't fearful of potential losses from the conversations he had, and Not All Hood was a space that he created to do exactly that, where he could control the narrative and he could have the difficult conversations that other people are afraid of. And so we had talked about like what we were going to talk about this Friday. And so of course I'm saddened to say that those conversations that we wanted, conversations that he and I have had in private multiple times, will not be allowed to be shared to the world. But I really encourage people to go watch that show if they're unfamiliar with it or have not seen it, because every single episode is just packed with a level of truth, authenticity, integrity, and like true Black liberation in each one of them. But it is a testament to his actual beliefs that he was not afraid of.
Wow, that's such an amazing tribute to someone who clearly was more than a television star, more than, an icon, but obviously a close personal friend of yours, Kimberly. Shy, I want to bring you into this conversation. Everyone didn't live through the Cosby Show. Everyone didn't experience Malcolm on that show that all of us did. Just talk about how revolutionary the Cosby Show was and Malcolm's role in it.
Man, like when I tell you, just among different generations, I grew up, six of us siblings, two-parent household, and I'm the baby. So me coming up in the era of the Cosbys, I got a different era of the Cosbys than my older siblings, but they fed it to me before daycare. And I remember just Theo Huxtable just being, first of all, I want to be very clear. Every episode, Theo Huxtable had a new girl. Okay. He had a new girl every episode. He stayed with a new girlfriend. I feel like he was like the soft launch king before Instagram even created that thing. Right. But I feel like with Theo Huxtable's character, it showed that Black boys, Black men, you don't have to be perfect to be seen, to be loved. And I admire that because when you do have brothers, when you do have cousins, and you're stepping into these realms of just Black love and you're getting into relationships, it is a reminder that they don't have to be this perfection for us to love them. Right? They could be just as lovable as Theo Huxtable. So, and we could go on and on because to watch the Cosbys now, it's almost like I never saw the episode. Right? Like, as soon as it hits, you're like, man, that helps me through this situation, even years later, or wow, maybe I should start doing things differently this way, or, so it's just I'm just very sad that this is why we're having this conversation. Unfortunately, as someone who interviews a lot of celebrities, I didn't get that chance. But I will say, although we lost the legend, I do believe his legacy is carried through us Black creatives, and those who dare to be seen, to be different, to be brilliant, to be intelligent, and be whole.
No, that's a great point, Shy. And Kimberly, the Cosby Show was a cultural reset in so many ways. Most Black families on TV were, they were struggling. They were one-dimensional. And here were the Huxtables, this aspirational Black family, but so real, so relatable in so many ways. Look, Theo had dyslexia. So it wasn't like this perfect family. They dealt with real issues that so many Black families deal with. We watched him grow up on that show. We watched him challenge his parents. We watched this young boy become, a Black young man. Talk about, what that was like and the impact, because I don't know if you haven't seen these shows, you've now got to go back and make sure you watch every one of them, because they had such an impact on all of us in the Black community.
Well, the other thing is, when you have someone who was raised in a way that Malcolm was, where he was very clear about his responsibility in that position and what that looked like, it allowed him to take that even outside of the Cosby Show. The first time he hosted SNL and they asked him who did he want to be the musical guest, and he brought on Run DMC. He single-handedly introduced hip hop to the SNL audience by being in that space and being able to do that. Prior to Theo, he told me this amazing story about how prior to Theo, you didn't see teenage boys on television with facial hair. For young teenage boys to be non-threatening, particularly and especially young Black teenage boys to be non-threatening on TV, one of the systems that they used was they never had facial hair. Well, he started growing facial hair. He started growing a mustache, and the director, who was not one of us, told them to take him upstairs and have him to shave. Well, a Black crew member stepped in on his behalf and said, "Hey, you don't understand Black skin. You can't just take a razor to that boy's face, because you're going to have him dealing with hair bumps and all of these things." And how the other Black crew members on the Cosby Show, kind of Wonder Twin activated and was expressing how we're about to mess up this boy's skin in order to satisfy this. And so they incorporated conversation and dialogue about him growing facial hair into that episode. And then that was the first time that a teenage Black boy was seen on TV with facial hair. So he was always like leading the march on change. And he was an actual activist. And one of the things that I have always celebrated about him was that he has always been enamored with and in touch with grassroots social justice workers, not just social justice influencers, because we're in a world now where we don't necessarily distinguish between the two. There's a difference between a social justice influencer, which we need, which is our community commentators, is very different than social justice organizers who are doing grassroots work to affect the community. A lot of celebrity are in touch with the grassroots influencers.
Right.
Malcolm was in touch with the grassroots organizers and workers. And so his platform, to go back to your question, his platform on the Cosby Show was rooted in the fact that that's what his father instilled in him, was a love and understanding and knowing his responsibility, and that in every space he had this desire to bring along, if you will, which is why you're on SNL and you're bringing along Run DMC, but you only get that because of the impact, the international impact of the Cosby Show.
So we know, Shy, all of that fame, right? The industry can be so brutal, particularly to Black men trying to do what Malcolm was doing, which was, be culturally relevant, be connected to his community, to, his Blackness. He seemed to navigate it so gracefully. What do you think, Shy, contributed to that?
I think he knew exactly who he was. And I tell this to people all the time. There's a difference between an individual who steps into entertainment and doesn't know who they are and what their purpose and their calling is, versus the one who knows exactly why God has placed them there. And I think it is evident when you hear these testimonies from his close loved ones, his friends, it is evident that he knew his purpose and he was going to fulfill it, and he wasn't going to compromise his integrity for anybody. I feel like as a Black man, that is the most masculine thing that you can do, and it really speaks to not only who he is but how he was raised. And and I want to make another point. Just like you were kind of saying, like how like we all feel close, like we all feel like we've lost someone special. I think that also goes to show the work that he has done with himself, his internal light. And I don't want to compare people, but there was something about the light that he had on the inside of him that went before his work. So you knew he was just different. Like, man, there's something pure and authentic about him, and it showed up on screen, off screen. It showed up when he was showing us, not his entertainment side. So I do believe that is the reason why he moved the way he moved in entertainment. He knew who he was, and he knew what he was called to do.
And so many of us, Kimberly, knew him through his work in entertainment. We didn't have the advantage that you had, which was knowing him personally, going to see him and his band perform, having conversations with him, sitting down on that podcast with him. Tell us a little about what was Malcolm like when the cameras weren't rolling.
You're so funny. He's just like, you make you laugh about the silliest things. Or, he had that thing like comedian has where like y'all had a conversation 3 days ago and then he says this snarky thing that like takes it back to this thing you forgot about. And you're like, oh my God, you get on my nerves. So he was really funny. But the thing is like, he was an artist in every sense of the word. People forget that he is a Grammy Award winning musician. And so he had a band. He was a poet. He's an actor. He's a director. He's a writer. He takes his health very seriously. So he loved to like let you know what was going on with juicing. He was politically engaged. And so he's such the pure definition of a Renaissance man that's so culturally resonant. I was watching recently when he was on, I think it was when he was on his Breakfast Club interview, and he was talking about how when he spent summers in Chicago, which we found out later, the summers he spent in Chicago was on the block that I grew up on Water Street in Chicago. And I'm like, we probably played together when we were little and just like don't remember it or don't know or whatever. But he talked about how his father, when he would spend summers in Chicago with his father and his grandparents, his father would give him Black history books on people like County Cullen and Langston Hughes and all of these people. And it was his summer. He wanted to be playing, and his dad is making him write book reports, about what's going on with him. And even with me as his friend, our conversations were always him giving me 1 million civics questions because he knows I work in the political and social justice space. Like he would send me interviews and be like, Kim, is this real or is this fake news? I'm like, no, that's fake news. This is what's actually happening with that bill. This is what that's actually going to turn out to look like. And so I was like his go-to person for like having political, me and another good friend of ours, Yanaja Lone Wolf, who also was on the Not All Hood podcast and was supposed to be coming back soon. And so he was just so connected to the world,
right?
Not only through his creative space, but through his social justice work, through his friendships, through his humor. It's just like, I tell people all the time, think of everything you would think it would be like to know him and then multiply it times 50.
Wow.
Like, is he poetic? Yes. Is he thoughtful? Yes. Is he kind? Yes. Is he around? Yes. Is he a protector? Yes. The night we would go see his band play at bars, like there would be bars around the city here in Atlanta. Like he's Malcolm-Jamal Warner. He's the superstar. He's making sure that all the girls individually, he's walking each of us to our car.
Wow. Wow. So he's just a kind-hearted individual. You just said so much, Kimberly. You've just shared so much
Yeah.
about him that those of us that didn't know him personally didn't know. And oftentimes, these images we see in the media, we get a glimpse of their lives, their professional lives, but we don't get to see that personal side that you just shared with us. So thank you for sharing that. So I'll ask you, Shy, what do you think young artists can learn or can take away from this example? I mean, Kimberly has just described this
Yes.
man.
Man, I think for any young artist that just views his life, honors and respects it, they know to when you stand for something, stand in it in its entirety, right? He was a stand-up guy all around, from the roles he took, from him just being a family man, and also being in the entertainment industry. So I think that and I love that it has been consistent as well. I want to be very clear. Like when you look at Overspin, you're like, wow, like were you always this phenomenal person, right? So it goes to show you that you don't have to compromise to be impactful, right? And I hope any young person that is out there and that's listening understands that, because we're living in that era, right? Especially social media, where fame, it's very egotistical, we're very self-absorbed, right? But it's like you can have that level of success and still be impactful by keeping your integrity.
Yeah, no, it's such an important message. Kimberly, you, friend, you obviously very close, had similar backgrounds growing up in Chicago. I went to college at the University of Chicago, so lived on the South Side myself, so know that community well. When you look back on Malcolm's amazing life, 54 years, I mean, he did things in this lifetime that many people will never achieve, even if they're much older. Obviously a dad, phenomenal actor, musician, award-winning musician, an activist. What do you think he would want his legacy to be? What does he want future generation of Black folk, particularly young Black men, to remember most about him?
I would say the first thing that I would start with is one of the things that Malcolm was most um, like proud of himself, and the thing that like drove him the most is that he was a good husband and father. And I want to, I definitely want to point out, I definitely, I know the world is going to emphasize that he was a good father, and they should, but this is important, especially in the climate that we're in and the communication that we're having in our community right now. He was a good husband.
Yes.
Really good husband. And so because I've seen people putting up things of like him and his ex who passed away being like, now they're reunited. I'm like, y'all, let's be respectful of the fact that this man has a wife that is mourning the loss of her husband and having to navigate this very difficult time and have very difficult conversations with their 8-year-old daughter. You know what I mean? And that's even one of the things that he asked me advice about one time, is because my father was older. My father who raised me was older. And Malcolm was like, Kim, because you have an older dad and I am an older dad, I'm 54 and I have an 8-year-old daughter. I think at the time when he was asking me this, he was 53 and she was 7. And he was like, what advice would you give me as an older father? What's something you took away from having an older father? And what I'm saying is that these are the type of conversations that he is having. So a lot of times we're so rooted in what our career is, but we're not having enough conversations about what our character is. I think he would want his legacy to be is exactly some of the things that Shy described, that the community sees in him, is his character. He was a good husband. He was a good father. He was a great son to his mom and dad. His mom talks about how, I just saw an interview of her where she talks about how he was easy to raise and how he always gives acknowledgement to his father. I can say personally, he was a good friend. My last text message, I recently just had a medical emergency, and my last text message that I have in my phone from him was, tell me what you need me to do, because sis, I need you.
Kimberly, I got goosebumps When
Yeah.
you said his mom said he was easy to raise, I am the mother of three kids, and that just hit me so hard. That just resonates with me. Yeah, there are some kids that are just easy. They're just the joy of your life. And it sounds like I didn't see that interview with Malcolm's mom, but the way you describe it, I mean, it just hits so personally to me as a mother that I know what she's talking about. You have those kids that you love them all. You love them all. But some of them are just easy. Oh man, that's thank you for sharing that. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing like a mother's love. Wow, that's incredible. I'm going to end with you, Shy. This young man touched
Yes.
so many of us through his artistry, through his
Yes.
music, through his example, through his his social activism. He wasn't just an actor, he wasn't just a musician, he was an activist in every definition of that word. Young folks coming up, and you interview and you interact with so many young entertainers and artists. What do you think the biggest lesson they can take away from the life of Malcolm Jamal?
I think I think the biggest lesson young entertainers can take from Malcolm is to know who you are. As simple as that. To understand what your calling is and live every day to fulfill it. It's not until someone passes away, right? Which is so unfortunate, but you really start to evaluate your life, right? Especially when it's someone that you didn't think was going to pass away.
Right.
And you see how, going back to how I spoke about it before, character, how impactful it is, right? Respect means way more than attention, as you can see. And I think this generation, I just want to make that clear to them, because with the likes and the let's do anything to be famous and let's do anything to be popular, and me, and I want everybody to know me, we see someone who served his people, served his community, and how much that respect and impact outweighs any fame anyone can have.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't do it for the likes. I mean, his
Okay.
parents, those black parents, south side of Chicago, man, this is, we know where he
Okay.
got it from. We don't have to look too far, Kimberly. I don't know if you had a chance to meet his parents, but as a mom, I'm just going to give it up for the parents. I'm
Yeah,
just going to
I'm like,
say,
I did not get a chance to meet his parents, but I definitely just hearing the way his mother talks about him and hearing the way he talked about his father. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think he grew up in New York, but he spent summers in Chicago with his father. And I know what those Chicago Black liberation daddies are like, and they are. I was raised by one, and
they hardcore.
they are hardcore. They are. Me and him used to laugh about that. I'm like, you used to have to write book reports. Well, at least that was just for summer. I got dropped off at the Carter G. Woodson Library on Saturday mornings and had to read Black history and then come back and give an oral presentation. And he's like,
Yes.
yeah, that tracks.
Yes, but look at the character. Look at
Yes.
those lessons and what they have produced in our community. Boy, this is amazing. Thank you both so much for sharing your personal, yours, Kimberly, your personal experiences with Malcolm, and you, Shy, for helping us put in context how important his life is to generations today and future generations. We are going to remember Malcolm-Jamal Warner, not just for the roles that he played, but the way that he filled our hearts. He filled our hearts. And in a time when the world is, trying to flatten us, trying to take us out, sometimes I feel like that they are
Okay.
on a mission to take us out of here. He helped lift us up. He did that. He made room for the full range of the Black experience. And we are better for it. We are better for his life. We are better for his walk and his experience. And again, I just want to thank you, Kimberly, for sharing your memories with your good friend. I know this is personal for you. Those of us like Shy and myself, who just knew him through his work, are sad and we are mourning his loss. But folks like you who had those intimate moments with him, our heart goes out to you as well. And we are extending our just condolences, our deep felt condolences to his entire family and his friend circle. And those that supported him and lifted him up, because you ladies know it's not easy being outspoken and being authentically Black as a Black man in this moment. So he lived such an authentically Black,
Yes,
life, and his example will live on in all the work that he did, his music, his theater, his entertainment life. We will never, ever forget how he made us feel. And I just want to thank you for being a part of my tribute to Malcolm-Jamal Warner. And thank you.
yes, thank you for having me. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for doing this.
This has been a special report, and we will see you next time. If you want more information about the special report, follow me across all social platforms at Areva Martin. Subscribe to my YouTube page and share the special report.
Calling all BIPOC college students, recent college graduates, and clinicians. Here's my story about CORE, a unique workforce development program that is changing lives. My brother is the most caring person you will ever meet. With his autism diagnosis, my family had to fight to make sure that the resources he deserved were available. That's why my goal has always been to help children with developmental disabilities and give them chances my brother may have missed. So when I heard about the CORE Fellowship, I knew immediately it was for me. The fellowship opens doors for myself and others like me. They offer training, a stipend while you're learning, job placement, and they'll pay up to $10,000 of my student loan debt. The CORE Fellowship is going to allow me to achieve my life's purpose. They care about me, so I can care about others, like my brother. Visit the website to learn more about the CORE Fellowship. Discover your core passion, your power, and your purpose. Apply today.